The French Prime Minister François Bayrou has called for a confidence vote at the beginning of next month over his budget plan. Still don't know if it's a confidence or no confidence vote. Pretty sure it's both. Taking a gamble which could risk the fall of his minority government. Several parties, including the Greens and the Socialists, have indicated they will vote against Bayrou, whilst the far-right National Rally leader Jordan Bardella saying that the Prime Minister had, in effect, announced the end of his government. Wow. Bayrou is seeking support for his unpopular €44 billion budgetary squeeze for next year, which says is needed to reduce the country's deficit, which stood at 5.8% of GDP last year. That is almost double the official EU limit. Now, as we've seen, the French stock market is under pressure today, but this isn't a brand new story. In fact, we've been worrying about French deficits, French public spending as a percentage of total GDP for a very long time. And government after government have failed ignominiously to get a grip on this as well. In fact, I'm just looking back over the last 5 years of French debt to GDP, which is another barometer of how tough it is. 2020 was 115%, 2021 113%, 111%. 109.8, and in 2024 113. So the overall stock of debt has been hanging around a very high level, as indeed, as you can see from that excellent chart from the team, the deficit. So the deficit's been high, the debt to GDP has been high, the public spending as a percentage of GDP has been high, and the different prime ministers who have tried to tackle this problem, the number have been high. The president came in 2017. That is, of course, Monsieur Macron. Since then, he has had the following: Edouard Philippe as the Prime Minister, Jean Castex, Elisabeth Borne, Gabriel Attal, Michel Barnier. A lot of the Brits will remember him. And now, of course, François Bayrou as well. So various governments have tried to tackle the same problem and failed ignominiously. I want to just get to a chart which I think shows France versus Germany over the last couple of years in terms of the stock market performance. I think we've got that one. We had it up earlier on the show. And what is very interesting is that this is not a brand new story in terms of the investor appreciation of how it's going. Now, whilst over the last 5 years, the French blue chips have rallied, and they've rallied well, they are at a dramatic discount to German blue chips, especially over the last 2 years. Here's the 5-year chart. Thank you very much indeed, Brittany and team. So you can see a 57% increase in French blue chips at the same time when the Germans have put on 89%. Year to date, this is very interesting as well. The French market barely moved. Germany, which, to be fair, for a lot of domestic factors, has seen a very big rally in areas such as defence, of course. The banking sector has had a fabulous rally to the upside, amongst others as well. And so you have seen a bit of a rally of some of the industrials off the lows as well. So you can see here, and the point I've been trying to make belatedly and a bit too long, is the fact that nobody thinks this story is new. It's just another incarnation.
The story's not new. The timing took markets by surprise. And I think to bring this back and use your, continue down the path of historical comparisons, I think everybody remembers the Gilets jaunes, the Yellow Vests movement several years ago. Massive protests, which were hugely disruptive to the country. And I don't think we can state that enough. And Bayrou was facing the prospect of protests come September. And that may have been what catalyzed the timing yesterday, that the government was facing the prospect of people taking to the streets. When we think back to the Yellow Vest movement, it was all about cost of living. People were unhappy with the way they felt taxes were falling, disproportionately hitting certain populations, rural populations, lower and working class people. And yet again, this is all about the budget, with Bayrou trying to rein in the budget, trying to bring down the deficit. But that obviously means cuts to public spending, and it means potentially higher taxes, which is extremely difficult for the French public to stomach. So we've all seen what happens when the French reject budgetary changes. And this was him trying to get ahead of those protests. But instead, you've got a plunge in the stock market, because now we're looking at a situation where either Bayrou gets unseated and we see the French president replace him with a new prime minister and look at another shaky government, or we see him forced to call a snap election, and we all know how that went last time around.
And look, I don't want anyone to have to work longer than they have to if they don't want to work. If they want to carry on gainful employment, good luck to them as well. But another area they tried to reform, the French pension age as well, which obviously I think some of the politicians want to reverse the previous reforms, which were quite meagre anyway. I'm sorry that the French feel that 64 is enough or is too high to for retirement age before you get your full pension as well. But it's going one way.
Yeah.
It's going one way in every developed nation and probably developing nation on the planet. Nobody is getting their pension earlier. In fact, if anything, I hear it on a regular basis in this country and every other country that it's going to be you're working for longer and you're going to get your full state pension later. In most European countries, it's already 67, 68. The French have still got it at 64. Again, I'm not here to bash France. I love France and I love the French people and I loved working for the French bank when I did so as well. But the fact of the matter is there is a divorce of realism of what's got to happen in order to get the finances on a sustainable...
But something's got to give. And I think to that point, we heard from the French finance minister this morning saying we need to find a path to prepare the 2026 budget, which will be a recovery budget. And we want to avoid the risk of IMF intervention in the case that the government falls. But I cannot pretend that this risk does not exist. Just speaking to the dire nature of the situation and to your point, they need to find a way to get their financial house in order here.